Coming out of Tampa Bay, Florida, Ronnie O'Neal III stood accused of murdering his girlfriend, their daughter, the attempted murder of his son, and arson after burning down his own house. Ronnie bravely represented himself in court, capturing the eyes and attention of an entire nation by screaming at jurors that the evidence would show that he was not the actual killer, but rather the government was involved in a cover-up of the actual crime, and that they had tampered with evidence, and that evidence would show that all of this was true. Unfortunately for Ronnie, the jury didn't seem to believe any of it, and he was convicted and found guilty on all counts that were charged against him. His legal defense did not actually work out. But now Ronnie is on to sentencing, and he is in Florida charged with more than just first-degree murder, and he faces the death penalty in his sentencing hearing. So what's next for Ronnie O'Neal? Let's talk about it real quick. I'm Nick Rekieta of Rekieta Law, a small law firm in central Minnesota. I'm a lawyer. I'm also a legal and political commentator on YouTube and on Odyssey. Make sure you go ahead and click like and subscribe wherever you're watching, and go ahead and share the video so other people can see this stuff as well. All right. Okay. Here we go. So Ronnie O'Neal, I gave you the breakdown. He was accused of several crimes, 2 counts of murder, 1 count of attempted murder, and 1 count of arson. He was found guilty on all of those counts. Now, you may ask why he was found guilty. Was it the murderous glare he gave the jury while he yelled at them that he was innocent? Was it the murderous glares he gave the prosecutors while he yelled at them? Was it just his hairstyle that did it? I actually don't think it was any of that stuff, although it was dramatic and made for a lot of attention. Really, Ronnie was done in by the testimony of his son who said, "You stabbed me. I saw you kill my mom. I saw you kill my sister." These are the things that did Ronnie O'Neal III in. That testimony from his son was powerful, and that's why the prosecutors brought the kid to the stand. Now, Ronnie did actually cross-examine his son, and that was kind of a wrenching thing to watch him ask his son questions after that night. His son, who allegedly saw him commit these horrific acts and managed to survive an attack from his own father, had to then testify about those acts to the father who attacked him. That was a traumatic and sort of awful looking experience for that child. But he did go ahead and do that. And that is really, really what probably did Ronnie in. There was other evidence as well, a 911 call from the victim, Kenyatta, talking about what was happening to Ronnie. And really just no plausible alternative theory. Ronnie seemed to indicate that there was some sort of cover-up in his story going on by the government, but that cover-up amounted to him claiming that they covered up the evidence that he was acting in defense of himself and of the child that he says Kenyatta murdered. And so he actually blames the murder of the daughter on his girlfriend and says that that is why he ended up killing her. But in the course of all this, you've got the testimony from the son, and you've got some specific spots in Ronnie's opening and closing arguments, one of which we're going to watch in just a minute, that kind of cemented his guilt in the minds of the jury. But before we watch that clip, and make sure you go ahead and watch till the end to see from his closing argument where I think Ronnie really made some critical errors. Let's take a look at what's going on with his sentencing. So Ronnie is going to allow attorneys to represent him during the penalty phase. So how this works in felony trials is you tend to go through the trial itself to determine guilt. And that is done by a jury. And then some states do it with a jury. Other states do it with a judge. But after the guilt is determined, once you get convicted on the actual counts, you've applied the law to the facts and come up with a conclusion as either a judge or a jury, in this case, a jury, and you deliver your verdict of guilt. Now they have to determine what level of punishment is appropriate. Ronnie O'Neal in Florida is facing the death penalty for his actions. So he has now agreed to allow attorneys to represent him during the penalty phase. Despite what may have happened during the, the trial, he thought he would be able to defend himself. That didn't turn out, and now he's going to let defense attorneys take over the case to try and keep him away from dying, probably just life in prison. That's still not the best outcome, and certainly not what Ronnie was looking for, but that's what he's got. So this is from News Channel 8 on your side, NBC News. Apparently, you can find this article down in the description of the video if you want to read it. But a Riverview man convicted of murdering his girlfriend and daughter is facing the death penalty for their brutal killings. He told the judge Tuesday that he will allow attorneys to represent him during his sentencing hearing. On Monday, jurors found O'Neal guilty of murder in the March 2018 deaths of Kenyatta Barron and their 9-year-old daughter, Ronnie O'Neal. The 32-year-old remained stoic as the jury read the verdict. He was more animated during closing arguments. He says, "You don't know what happened to my daughter, but you better believe I know what happened to my daughter, and that's why Kenyatta Barron is dead," O'Neal told jurors. He admitted to killing his girlfriend, claiming it was because she murdered their child and had tried to kill their son. He says, "I did kill Kenyatta Barron, but I want you to tell it like it is if you're going to tell it," O'Neal said. And again, those admissions are what probably are really cementing his guilt in the eyes of the jury. But according to prosecutors, O'Neal's account of the killings don't add up. After a week of explosive and emotional testimony, it took the jurors just over 4 hours to reach a verdict, which is a little longer than I thought it might take. I was thinking it would be about a minute. O'Neal was convicted of 2 counts of first-degree murder for his daughter and girlfriend's death and attempted murder for stabbing his son. He was also found guilty of 2 counts of aggravated child abuse and for setting the family's home on fire. O'Neal, who acted as his own attorney, was complimented by Judge Michelle Cisco for his efforts. She says, "I have to tell you, in another lifetime, you would have been an excellent lawyer." And that's kind of interesting because, to Ronnie's credit, he didn't do a bad job. He stayed within the rules. His cross-exam was done relatively well. I think he made a lot of mistakes in what he was getting done. But, for someone with no legal training, he did okay. It didn't pan out for him, and that's probably because, again, the evidence was stacked against him pretty heavily, and the testimony of his son, and finally, this little tidbit from his closing arguments. Let's listen here.
You heard Khalil Brown. He said that he was actually sure that I only hit Kenyatta Barron 3 times. You heard. I called him to tell you that. I ain't running from nothing. They didn't call Khalil Brown to tell you that. I did. And you have to ask yourself why that is. Because I want you.
You do have to ask yourself why that is, because calling a person to testify that you hit, that he was sure that you only hit your girlfriend 3 times. And I think he means with the shotgun, but it's a little bit unclear. Isn't the best way to win a murder trial. And the prosecutors probably felt they didn't need that testimony. But that being said, he called him up to testify about how he hit the person 3 times that ended up dead in that same incident. So not the best move, but here we go.
To know the actual facts. I did kill Kenyatta Barron.
Oh.
But I want you to tell it like it is if you're going to tell it.
So there it is. There it is. He makes the admission, I did kill Kenyatta Barron, but I want you to tell it like it is if you're going to tell it. Now, of course, he was attempting to use the defense that the killing was justified. The problem for that is he didn't have any witnesses that had seen him defending his daughter or had seen the mother attacking the daughter. And that is not going to help you win the case when there is evidence that that you did commit the acts and that there's no countervailing testimony. There's nothing backing up what you're claiming. And that is what ultimately did Ronnie in this case. But I know some of you have been following along. I wanted you to know the conclusion to the trial portion is that he is guilty on all counts. And in his upcoming sentencing hearing, he will be represented by attorneys. Now, there is still hope for some fiery oratory from Ronnie O'Neal. He may make a statement on his own behalf at trial or at the hearing. We'll have to just wait and see if that's going to happen. I will be following along, and we'll see when that hearing occurs. So, hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you for watching. Again, until next time, don't defend yourself. Just don't do it. Peace. Peace.